Hello everyone, my name is Jessie Boyer and I'm going to be talking about the firestorm at Peshtigo, a town, its people, and the deadliest fire in American history by Denise Guess and William Lutz. In 1871, Peshtigo was a small town that was being built up by William Ogden and Isaac Stevenson. It was known for its sawmills and farming, which produced a lot of sawdust and wood piles which were then burned for land clearing. Ogden had his sights set on building a railroad by Peshtigo, which called for even more land clearing. The National Weather Service, as well as other sources, affirm the author's account of the fire. The storm was able to reach the magnitude it did due to the land clearing practices, prolonged drought, heat, and railroad construction at the time. However, it would take years after the actual firestorm for them to fully understand why and how the storm came about in the first place. The authors pull from first-hand accounts like those of Father Pernin, who survived the firestorm and detailed his experiences. At one point, before the firestorm even hit Peshtigo, Pernin found himself surrounded by bushfires on all sides of him. He was terrified, but he did survive this experience. These sort of experiences were detailed throughout the book, where the fires from the bush clearing surrounded residents and were getting out of hand, but still no one thought to evacuate at the time. Increase Lapham, a meteorologist, tried to warn officials that a large disaster was imminent, but people did not listen or spread the word to evacuate. Increase Lapham would later start the National Weather Service and tried to warn officials of the changing weather patterns from the fronts that were occurring from Canada. You can see a picture of this from the National Weather Service in the graph, and this allowed for an increase of winds, change in temperature, that all allowed the firestorm to culminate to the magnitude that it did. All of these factors culminated to the firestorm, which occurred on October 8, 1871. It affected the surrounding regions of Peshtigo, including Marinette and Menominee. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, 1.5 million acres were burned. Sources estimate anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 deaths occurred in the affected regions, but most sources agree that the death toll in Peshtigo itself was about 800. However, the authors, Guess and Lutz, argue that it was far greater than that. The Peshtigo fire also occurred on the same day as the Great Chicago Fire. However, it received far less attention, even though it had a greater death toll. Survivors stated that the approaching firestorm sounded like a freight train, and that the fire literally rained down from the sky onto the people in the town below. The devastation was all-encompassing. People were reduced to ash, and bodies were burned beyond recognition. The landscape was completely leveled, where natural landmarks were completely destroyed, and people suffered from prolonged psychological experiences after, where their injuries were so extensive and it seemed like there was no hope left for them. The authors did a wonderful job at capturing the effects of the firestorm as well as setting up the context of the disaster. They included detailed stories of families who perished by the fire and survivor accounts that made the novel a compelling read. Here are two images from the after effects of the fire. A lot of wildlife perished due to the fire, and things were completely burned down to where just the railroad lines, the iron from the wheels, and the iron from wagons were left over. The authors, however, do not discuss any mitigating policies or procedures that resulted from the firestorm. Actual policies may not have been recorded, but the residents of Peshtigo learned how important the combination of droughts, wind, and land clearing techniques had on the environment. It would take some time before the survivors, officials, and scientists fully understood why and how the fire started, and it is assumed that mitigating techniques and policies were adopted after the fact. It remains that listening to professionals like Increase Lapham and evacuating the region would have resulted in fewer deaths. The firestorm at Peshtigo remains a haunting lesson for those in emergency management.